the portion on taxes. Anna's never really cared, for those of you who knew Anna Abbott, she never really cared for presenting. It's just not her favorite thing to do. And so a couple of years ago, she asked me, don't ask her anymore, basically. And so the past couple of years, I've been telling you about the tax changes. I've known Diane for 23. So I rented my first office from Diane. It wasn't even an office, it was an office, literally a little teeny office that barely fit a desk and my chair and 2 chairs for clients. And that was about it on like 19th and Kipling. And so I've known her for probably 22 years. And we were invited to the Elks Lodge on the same night, and she ended up, we knew somehow on Facebook she knew I was going to the Elks Lodge, and we went up there and we were sitting there talking about this presentation, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to talk about the tax stuff. And she got so excited. She's like, I love the new tax laws, and she just got like fired up, and I'm like, you're gonna come present? So she's here, and we gotta give her kudos because it's tax season. So she in her paperwork here, she has an EA license. Some of you may not know what that is. It's an enrolled agent, which means she can argue before I'll let her explain that, argue before the IRS, that sort of stuff. And then I will just let her come tell a little bit about herself.
Thank you, Linda. I'm really glad to be here. As she said, I really do get fired up about taxes. I really enjoy what I do, and I know that's hard for you guys to understand, but numbers are easy for me. So tax law makes it more challenging to try and do something with those numbers. So let's start out with, and I should preference this a little bit. I'm one of those examples of why you need Linda. My husband was killed in an accident 2 weeks before our first wedding anniversary. As you can imagine, we had no planning done. We were still paying off wedding bills. So I'm one of those examples of why you're here and Linda's doing a good job for you. And that was a long time ago. I can talk about it without crying now. So let's start out with, pardon?
You want this? So you don't have to hold that?
No, I'm okay. How do I run this? Oh, tax simplification. This is the IRS's version of tax simplification. How much did you make? Send it in. Well, thank goodness our elected officials have a different view of that, and they're trying to keep the IRS in check. So, taxes. Who started this mess? And why did they start this mess? As most of you remember from our history, am I holding it up okay?
Yeah, can you guys hear okay?
I'm a tax person. We started this by the high tax that England put on our tea. We revolted, and thus was born the United States. So taxes go way back in our history. We didn't have income tax after them. We didn't have any tax. Our country was run by tariffs. We didn't have any tax for almost 100 years of our country's first existence. They only put the first income tax in place to finance the Civil War. We had to buy munitions. We really needed the money then. As soon as the war was over, they repealed the tax. What a concept, right? Well, in 1913, they had a different view, and they put in the first income tax. Now, I have a copy of the first income tax form that's framed in my office. It looks very different than what you guys know as an income tax form today. I think the rate was 1% back then. Can you imagine if our tax rate was 1%? Look at your paychecks, wow. So, it's very different now. The whole concept of income and the rates are very different than what our country first envisioned as income tax. And they're now using it as a way to control our economy. So if they want to encourage us to save and not spend, they put in a deduction or a credit for interest income. And they eliminate the deduction for interest on credit cards. So it controls the way that we act as a country, and it helps guide our economy, which is not such a bad thing when you think about it. If you've got somebody that knows what they're doing at the head. No political and no statement, just looking at the Federal Reserve, they're really trying to monitor and raise rates and guide our economy pretty well. But they do adjust the tax code quite frequently. So let's talk about prior law. You've all done the itemized deductions, you've kept your receipts, you've got your medical bills, you bring your accountant to all of your taxes on your property, your interest on your home mortgage, and that's what we're all used to. Because the IRS said that the average married couple spent $12,700 on all of these items. But if you can show us that you spent more, you can take the larger amount, and most of us did spend more. So we itemized our deduction. Well, that's no longer the case. Now we have the new tax law that came into existence for 2018. We have a whole new set of rules, and they were made a little more complex by our IRS because they were just so willing to help, as usual. I'm from the government, I'm willing to help, isn't that an old adage? And Congress was pretty upset with the IRS because they had just given themselves $60 million in bonuses. And then they wanted more money because Congress enacted the new law and they had to revise all their forms. So they went back and wanted more money. Instead, Congress got mad and cut their budget. And who's going to suffer? We're not. Because if you've ever tried to call the IRS now, there's no one there to help you with the new tax law. So they simplified the deductions that you guys have all known as Schedule A itemized deductions. Simplified is another word for reduction. They've reduced all the itemized deductions. The only one that they really expanded was medical. And you can now deduct a little more of your medical bills that you incur during the year. But your state taxes are now limited. Mortgage interest is now limited. You still have charitable deductions, but personal and casualty losses that we used to be able to deduct, those are now, not if your auto gets stolen and it wasn't covered by insurance. Now it has to be in the national disaster area for it to be deductible. And I guess we do have quite a few of those. Now, job expenses, something that many of you had when you were working, employee job expenses. Maybe you had to buy a home computer, maybe you had to travel for your job that wasn't covered. All of those have been eliminated. And investment expenses, safety deposit box, having your taxes prepared, all of those miscellaneous deductions have been eliminated. In simplification, yes, now you don't have to keep track of all those, but those are no longer something that you have as a deduction on your Schedule A. So your Schedule A is going to look a lot different. Moving expenses. Now, it used to be that if you moved over 50 miles, you could deduct the cost of moving. They've eliminated that deduction too. So there again, you don't have to keep track of your expenses, and that's the only good thing I can tell you, is you don't have to keep track of all of those receipts anymore. But they did give us, I almost forgot the other thing that they eliminated, exemptions. So, now that was the one easy thing that you did on your tax return. Remember, it was $4,000, in 2017, it was like $4,050 per person in your family, and you got to take a deduction for that. How easy was that one on your tax return? Well, the exemptions are now eliminated, so you don't take those. They did get a little complicated if maybe a grandchild came to live with you during the year. Can I claim them? Can I not? Are they too old? But now that deduction is eliminated altogether. And here's what they've replaced it with. Let's look at the standard deduction. Remember I said that the IRS said that the average married couple spends $12,700 on all the interest, taxes, medical, but if you spent more, well, in 2017, the married filing joint was $12,700. In 2018, it's $24,000. And if you're over 65, that goes up. And if you have an exemption for being blind, that goes up again. So for a married couple that's over 65, I think it's 26,600. So you're not going to itemize your deductions probably unless you have something really, really large. Because the 26,600 is really going to cover your itemized deductions. Now that really simplifies your tax return. You don't have to have all those receipts, you don't have to haul them all to your accountant. They're just going to take the standard deduction. So, and this is supposed to encompass the exemptions too. So it's your income, you take off the $24,000 for an average married couple, and there you are with your taxable income. Actually, last year, there were some of my clients that, after this had come out, I looked at them and said, I really, really like you, but you're not going to need me anymore because you're not going to need to itemize your deductions. We're not going to have to look at whether that grandchild qualifies as an exemption. You're not going to need me. Your tax return is going to be too simple. So I just don't see why I should charge you to do a tax return that you can do yourself. And I hated to see those people go because they've been with me for a long time, but it was what I needed to do that for their benefit. They still call. Are you sure? Yes, sir, we have a question in the back.
Some folks like us have things like capital gains, losses. Some folks like us have things like capital gains, capital losses, dividend income, foreign tax credits.
That's my favorite.
We cannot do standard deductions. They're more too complicated.
You still take the standard deduction, but you're absolutely right. Your return is a little more complicated when it comes to calculating your income. So, and we'll get to that on next couple slides about the capital gains rate, foreign tax credit. That's one of my favorites, and a lot of people miss that one. We'll talk, that's a really good one because that's on the statements that you get from your investment advisor. Have you ever seen that? And it's not usually a large dollar amount because maybe you've got a mutual fund or something that's invested in foreign, and they do the withholding for the country that you're invested in. And that, the IRS changed that so you don't have to do that complicated 1116 form anymore. Now, if it's less than $400, I believe, don't quote me on that, but if it's less than a certain amount and it's on your interest and dividends, you can just take it right to your 1040 and take a direct tax credit for that foreign tax you paid. And that's a dollar for dollar. If they withheld $100, you get $100 off your tax. And you don't have to do the 1116 form anymore. That's one of my favorites. And a lot of people miss that one. They don't want to look at that on their investment form. They just want to see how much they made. But believe me, we accountants want to see how much you paid. So, individual tax rates. Here's the real meat of what they did in the 2018 tax law. They took the brackets, as you probably all know, we have graduated rates. If you get to here, it's 10%, 15, 20, and it was a very steep climb. What they did was they widened the brackets and they lowered the rate. So now, if your first dollar of income is in the 10% bracket, and you stay in that 10% bracket longer, and then you go up to the next one, but you stay in that longer. And they've lowered the rates, which is resulting in a nice reduction. I'm seeing for my clients that I've met with so far, I'd say that the average married couple that I'm seeing, their taxes down, let's say they made $100,000 last year and they made $100,000 this year, the tax that the IRS is keeping is down over $2,500. And for a family, you know what, that's meaningful. Raising kids these days, I'm glad I didn't have to buy my son or daughter a cell phone when they were in 4th grade. It was easy. So these are our new tax rates, and I've just taken I've done an example with the $250,000 or lower, because that's really where the meat of it is. When you're in the higher income tax brackets, they didn't get much of a tax cut. When you get up to the $400,000, and there's some examples in your packet that I'm going to go over very briefly, but they really are paying maybe a little more in taxes, whereas the families are getting the benefit of this tax cut. So the other thing that they did for families was they had a child tax credit, and you've probably heard about this, but it was $1,000 per child that you got a tax credit. Well, they doubled that, and now it's $2,000 per child that you get a tax credit for. But this tax credit only worked if the child was under 16. They've added something. Now, we all know that the cost of raising a child doesn't end at 16. So now they've added one called other dependents, and it's only $500, but $500 is $500. And so for our kids that are over 16, there's an other tax credit which adds on another $500 onto your credits. And that's really where these families are realizing some relief. So let's look at some examples. Let's see what I put in here. So how do you save? Here's my family with $100,000. I guess I like that number. In 2017, they had $100,000 in income. They had exemptions, that $4,000 per child, and you each got a $4,000 exemption. And then let's say that their mortgage interest, their home real estate taxes, all of those things added up to 20 grand. Well, their taxable income of $63,800, at the tax rate for that was 15%. They had 2 kids, so they got $1,000 per child. Their tax was $7,500. Under the new law, their tax is only $5,100. Big difference for a family. That $2,000 can mean a lot. And that's where the meat of our 2018 tax law really is helping, is those families. Now, my kids are grown, so it's not helping me, and it's probably not helping a lot of you for those child tax credits, but for the people that are raising kids these days, it really is meaningful. I think I've got a couple more examples in here, and I put these in your packet because I knew you'd have the handouts, just so that you can refer to them or talk to your kids about the examples. This is a family, 4 kids making $75,000. You can see the tax savings that they're going to receive this year. Let's go up to a high earner. And for someone that is, let's see if I can even read what I put in here, for $450,000. Okay, now here's where I was talking about the tax rates aren't for the high income individuals. So this is someone who's making over $450,000. Their tax actually went up because those tax rates weren't reduced substantially. They're itemizing probably because they've got a lot of deductions, but their tax rate didn't go down like yours did. Now, the one place where it does help them is if they're a business owner. And that's the other thing that, and they called this the Jobs Act, the Tax Jobs Act. They did a lot of things to try and help families, but they also wanted to help create jobs. So we'll talk about corporate tax rates in a minute, but they put in a 20% deduction for business owners. They're the ones that are putting capital back into our economy, hiring jobs, giving people employment. So they put in a 20% deduction for all business owners. Now that is going to be for rental properties, if that's your business. It's going to be for pass-throughs, partnership, sub-S corps. That's going to be for those too, that 20%. So it's really kind of across the board to help the economy expand. And as we've seen this last year, it has worked. What a concept. They put in a tax law that worked. Yeah, I was surprised too. Because I've seen a lot of tax changes in my day, and they don't always work like they should. So it was designed so that they would increase jobs. So this is the only place that the high earner is really going to wind up paying less in taxes. So let's talk about that. There we go. So the business pass-through rate, like I said, it's 20%. It also applies to estates, trusts. If it's a business, if it's a pass-through, you're going to be able to take, and it's very easy to take that 20%. Now, I say easy because it's easy for me, but the IRS doesn't make anything easy. Let's face it. So if you're a high earner, you have a lot of thresholds to meet, and you have a lot of hurdles to jump, but you still can get a good tax deduction from it. This is just a chart I kind of put together so that I could easily see, you know, where people would fall in and fall out, and I thought it would just be something to give you guys in your packet. I'm not going to test you on this. But this is one of the deductions the IRS calls easy. So, there's a lot of other things that are still out there, and I call them the don't miss items. These are some of my old favorites that are still around. If you make under $60,000, which let's look at someone who's just starting out, and we want them to start when they're young, putting money in their retirement accounts. Just think if you would have started if that first dollar they earned, if you would have put, 10% away the whole time you were earning, imagine where you'd be now. Well, our kids can do that because they have a credit that they can take when they first start out. If they make under $60,000, there's a credit for contributing to not just an IRA, but to that employer's retirement fund. And it comes right out of their paycheck and goes into the 401k that they have. They get a credit for that. And it's a nice little credit that they get. For if you bought an electric car, those are kind of popular right now. They're putting in charging stations all over the city. There's a nice credit for purchasing an electric car during the year. And solar panels, you want to put solar panels on your roof, there's a nice credit that's still around for that. So for the educators, any of you have children that are teachers that work in the education field? They have, as we all know, they buy things for their classroom. The school districts have struggled, and these teachers are buying things to take to school. There's a $250 deduction for them for all those supplies that they take, and they didn't take that one away from us. And that's not something that you have to itemize to take. It's just a deduction out there for educators. I love it when I get a teacher that's a new client. I'm like, have you been taking that? Oh, no. Oh, you have to take that one. That's a good one. So, and the foreign tax credit, like the gentleman in the back mentioned, foreign tax credit, that's on, look at your investment statements. If you've got mutual funds, I'll bet you have some foreign taxes. And you can take a dollar for dollar deduction, credit, not deduction, but credit for that. And you don't have to do that complicated 1116 form anymore in order to take it. You can just put it on your tax return as a credit and get the money back. That's yours. No sense in paying double taxes. I tried to put some cartoons in here. I know this is kind of boring for a Saturday morning. It's a good thing Linda had good food for me today because this is not an easy topic. Did you have a question in the back?
I haven't heard you mention long-term care insurance.
Long-term care insurance is still one of the items you can take as a medical, which goes through your Schedule A. It's also something that here in Colorado, we have a credit for. So long-term care insurance would go onto your Schedule A as a medical expense. But if you're not going to come up with $24,000, which one are you going to take? The long-term care insurance and the little bit of interest that you have and expenses that maybe total up to $10,000, or are you going to take the $24,000 that they're going to give you? So a lot of people are not taking that deduction. And remember, it has to go through the 7.5% deductible that the IRS has. But on Colorado, we have a credit for that. So if you're under the income amount that they set, you get a credit for that. So that's a good credit for Colorado. Now, I will warn you that Colorado really wants you to send in that statement that you have showing that. I don't know why they don't trust us, but they don't trust us. And they want you to send that in with your tax return. And if you're filing electronically, you scan it and attach it. Otherwise, you're going to get a nasty gram about June asking for it. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, sir.
Now, on contributions.
Wait. I went to a different person that was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I believe on your contributions, if you don't meet the $24,000 limit, you can still deduct your contributions on your state return over $500.
That's correct.
And this year, they are requiring you to send in, demonstrate that you actually made it. So you got to keep all the paperwork to send it to the state.
So, I do still ask my clients about their contributions, you're correct. But most of them don't have the over $500. And it's the amount that's over is what you get to take against your Colorado return. So it's not as much.
Wait.
I haven't had them ask for the substantiation though. I've been doing that one on Colorado for quite a while for my clients that don't itemize, and I haven't had the state come back and ask for it. They always ask for the long-term care.
Right.
Statement.
Last year, they asked for the long-term care. This year, the demonstration they want is on the contributions, and you got to fill a separate form to send in and attach your documentation to it.
Yeah.
Make copies of what you send in because they're not going to give it back, give the
You can't
information
hear you
back to you.
without the mic.
He said make copies of what you send them because they're not going to give them back. So don't ever send them your original documentation. And that goes for the IRS too. That goes into a black hole and you'll never see it again. Thank you.
Would you mention, please, about the long-term care $150 tax credit? That's still, I believe, income limited to $50,000, $100,000. However, the state of Colorado did us a favor recently to knock out the upper income limit on the $24,000.
They took out the upper income level for the long-term care.
No, for the income annuity subtraction, there's no longer an upper income limit on that.
So
It's a big help.
Isn't that a great deduction that Colorado has? And a lot of states have this, but not all of them have this. But Colorado, when you do your Colorado return, you can deduct a great portion of your pension, Social Security, all that retirement income per spouse off of your Colorado return, which severely brings down your Colorado tax rate. And which is good because Colorado didn't adjust their tax rate down. And they didn't incorporate any of the federal tax law into theirs. They left their rate the same. That was a great discussion in our state legislature, but they decided to leave it the same. But for folks that are retired, yes, make sure you claim that pension income exclusion. That's a great one. We've got one up here.
How come the news media and everybody's been telling us this has been a tax reduction for the rich? And the way you explain it is completely different than everybody's being told in this world.
I'm supposed to answer why the news media is distorting things. But I see you have a very good point. To me, I'm a numbers person. And numbers don't lie. This is what I'm seeing with my clients, and I've given you examples, higher income, lower income. I see that it's helping families. What did happen though, and what is hitting the news media, is that after Congress passed the 2018 law, the IRS didn't get any more money. So as they were going in and revising all the forms so that they would work for you for this year, they also adjusted the withholding rates. And they gave people back more money on their paycheck because they're going to be paying less tax, so they should be withholding less. Well, they didn't get it exactly right. Surprise, surprise. So people got a lot more back on their paychecks. The employer withheld less federal tax, and now they're getting less of a refund. So in my example of the family of four, that their tax, $100,000, their tax went down $2,500, but they got it on their paychecks each pay period. Now, instead of getting a big refund, they're getting less of a refund, so they don't see the tax cut. And it's hard for me to explain to them, you got that $2,500 on every paycheck. But that went, so that's gone now. And it's gone. So that's what they're talking about, and that's what they're seeing is the refunds on up. I think the last number I saw, the average refund was $4 higher than last year, where it should be $2,500 higher for my family of four. But they got it on their paychecks. So it's already spent.
Pelosi and Schumer, they were the ones that said that it was a rich tax cut. They're trying to run our country. So I don't believe any of it.
I look at the numbers. And that's why I gave you examples of high income, low income, and that. Now, capital gains, while she's getting up here, let's talk just for a second about capital gains. Those didn't really change. We're still enjoying pretty low rates. So when you're holding an investment long term, which is 1 year or more, you still have really low rates for paying tax on that gain. Now, and you all know that you don't have to reinvest the proceeds from your home if you sell it, as long as you live there 3 of the last 5 years, and it's not over a certain dollar amount, that money is tax-free. That's not the investment I'm talking about. And
On that higher tax rate, I thought that the very high income people went down like 2.5% on what they had to pay for taxes.
The rates were broadened so you don't hit that high bracket as fast. So yes, but they still have the high tax rates.
To answer his question, the rich did get a big tax cut, 2.5% at least.
Yeah, because you don't get to the high rates as fast, sure. So this is just for your information. We're not going to talk a lot about the estate and gift tax exemptions. It's just too bad we don't have a crystal ball. Our estate planning would be so easy if we knew what year we were going to die and what year we need and what Congress was going to have in place. Look at the jump from 2017 to 2018. Now, I will warn you that this sunsets, meaning it goes away in 2025. What the new exemption will be in 2025, your guess is as good as mine. And this could change. We have new sheriff in town in the Congress, and they could go back and change this. So it's really hard to plan when you don't know what they're going to do. You just have to take what they have at this time and use that as a guideline.
Go ahead. We have a few questions over here, and I want to let you know we are at 12:10.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah, one, I think I got it correct, but I just am double checking. Back to that solar energy, that's a one-time deduction when you put the panels on your house, correct?
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
it is.
Back on slide 20 where you had the high income earners making 450,000,
Yeah.
it seems to me that for 2017, the itemized deduction of the 35,000 versus the 30,000 in 2018, the 35,000 is really low. In fact, the numbers that you have down in the lower left corner there add up to 40-something thousand, which is probably what the person in 2017 could have taken. Plus, they probably had some miscellaneous deductions that they were paying somebody to manage their portfolio. So they would have more like maybe 45 or 50,000, which would make their taxes lower, make their taxes even lower in 2017 compared to 2018.
Oh, so you think they would have had more, and that could be, they could have had more deductions in that year. You have to remember when you get up into those high income tax brackets, though, your miscellaneous deductions are limited. And in 2018, their deductions are limited, and it's down to 30 because you can only take a maximum of $10,000 in state tax deductions now, no matter how much you have.
Yeah, I wasn't arguing 2018, I was saying 2017.
They could have had more. Good point.
So if we can stay on our time frame, let's keep it to questions, and then if we have time for like analyzing this stuff, we can, but we've got two more presentations after this.
Okay, let's wrap up
No, but
then.
I don't want you to cut out the good stuff.
We can hold the question.
Okay, so real quick, just if you have a corporation, the corporate tax rate, you can see 2017 went up to 35%. 2018 is a flat 21%. So no more graduated rates. Now that seems a little unfair, but remember this was a Jobs Act. So what this has done, and the slide that, I'm sorry, the next slide isn't in your packet, I didn't get it in there. But it's a chart that shows worldwide all the corporate tax rates. We had the highest tax rate for our corporations in the world, in the free world. The average corporate tax rate is 23% in the world. We were at 35, plus state tax adds another 4%, so that's 39%. So why was Ford Motor Company putting their plant in Mexico when their tax rate is 20% and ours is 39? It really didn't make any sense. I'm surprised it took them this long to do this. But we are now right in the middle for our marginal rate for our corporations, because the average worldwide corporate tax rate is 23. So we're just a couple of percentages underneath that, but that's to bring these businesses and bring their plants back to the US. And let's see. Method of filing, there's always online filing, there's going to a CPA CPA, I will tell you, if you do online filing, make sure you understand the question. You don't know what that software is doing behind the scenes when you answer the question. Make sure you answer all the questions. Just leaving out your age can drastically change your tax. If you go to a CPA, get chatty. They need to be able to talk to you. Don't be nervous. We need to understand what all you've talked about. It's hard for me to draw you out, and sometimes I'll seem like I'm just chatting away, wasting your time, but I'm really trying to understand your situation and understand what else you might have that you don't know is deductible, but I do. So, if all else fails, go back one.
Am I missing something?
We are. I had a picture of the extension. So if you're at 11:59 and you haven't filed on April 15th, just go online and do an extension. It's the easiest form they have. It's your name, your address, your social security number. If you think you're going to owe money, you just plop in the dollar amount and you send it in. And then go to bed. You don't have to worry about it. Then you have time to go back and look at it and do it right and make sure you've got all your income in there. Make sure you've got all your deductions. Extensions are not a red flag to audit you. It's automatic. You don't even have to have a reason. Simply put in your name, your address, and send it in. Even if you're getting a refund, send it in, and then don't worry about it until tomorrow. So, thank you.
She left her cards out front? Is that what you did?
I did. I left some cards on the table in front. If you have questions, just email me. I'll be happy to answer them.
And she is taking off, so she won't be, do we have any other questions?
Yeah.
Right, okay, yeah, we're running behind.
Email me your questions, but I have clients.
Yeah, she has to take off. Are you sure you don't want to grab food on your way out?
I'll grab it in tonight when I'm done.
All right, thank you, Diane. Oh, never mind, it's right there.
Okay, so I don't have a super long topic to talk to you guys about, but it is the most awesome one that you're gonna hear today. So you know that feeling when you find like a $20 bill in your jacket? There's like a way bigger way to do that, is what we found out, and it's called the Great Colorado Payback. So what the Great Colorado Payback is it's this organization that keeps track of all these unclaimed properties. So any intangible property, you guys know what personal property is from your personal property memorandum. So that's all your stuff, your jewelry, things like that. Intangible property is, you know, the stocks, CDs, accounts. So anything you see listed there, you may have floating around. Maybe you forgot about it 20 years ago and it's just sitting in the Colorado unclaimed funds. And so, you know, an example on this is a safety deposit box. If you forget you had it there and there's stuff in it, something has to happen to that stuff. And so you can use that same analogy with CDs or insurance checks.
And possibly former accounts or safe deposit boxes of your loved ones in the past.
Right, so this could be for your stuff or for your loved one. Your loved ones may also have had it. They weren't here at this presentation like you are, so lucky to be here, and they didn't find out about the Great Colorado Payback. So you may want to look into, you know, other people who may not have checked the unclaimed funds. There's more than $600 million in there right now. So out of a room with almost 200 people in it, someone in here has got to have unclaimed funds in there. If you find it, call me so I can be a part of your $20 bill in your pocket story. Yeah, so there's all these accounts, so, you know, just even for businesses. So maybe you had a business and you closed it, you haven't thought about it in a while. While you're there, checking on your personal name, see if there's any money for your business. So it's actually not, it surprised me that it's not a super long amount of time that these funds stay dormant before they go to unclaimed, the Great Colorado Payback, and they're called unclaimed. So for some accounts it's 3 years, and that made me start thinking, I'm like, I I think I actually started a CD when I was 14, and I don't know if I've looked at it since then. And someone just told me it was a good idea, and I forgot about it. So things like that, 3 to 5 years really isn't that long of a time. So kind of look back at what you've been doing and see if there's something out there. It doesn't ever disappear, so if there was something that you forgot about 30 years ago, it's still going to be in the Great Colorado Payback, so you can find that.
And I think that's important for your loved ones in the past, your parents, siblings.
Right.
You may have done, professional trustees, we've talked to Pueblo Bank and Trust, but that's one of the first things they do, and that's what gave us the idea to talk about this. So even though you think, I know I would remember if I had a bank account. Actually, this happened to me when I was in college. I had opened a bank account when I was in high school and went away to college and forgot about it. Got a call from, well, they didn't have this back then, I don't think, but World Savings saying, you've got $2,000 in there, as a college student. I was like, wow, cool. That was better than 20 bucks in my pocket. But don't go on there just to look for you. If you administered your parents' estate or a sibling's estate or somebody else, it never goes away. So you can go on there and look at former loved ones, because we have had recently cases where one of them, the granddaughter came in and she has 3 safe deposit box keys. We don't know what bank. You can't just walk into a bank and say, does Linda Sommers have a safe deposit box here? We have another case where the person that died had a safe deposit box at United Bank at the Villa Italia. Well, if you know United Bank at the Villa Italia, that building is gone. So I don't know where the contents of the safe deposit boxes went for the people that didn't come clean them out before they destroyed the building. So don't look just for you, but look for your deceased loved ones as well. And then we may have probate when you find it out.
Yeah, so I know you're all dying to know how you can go look at this and see if you, is that a question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right? You're like, how do I go find this out? You're like, I'm gonna leave right now and go do it. Wait until you leave this presentation. Linda has important stuff to talk to you about, so you can't just blaze over.
Where's the question?
No, it wasn't a question, she's excited. Oh, I thought you were a question. Oh, I thought you shook your head, sorry. What was that?
Does any other state offer this? Or is it only Colorado?
I bet they do. Oh, actually, so that was how we originally found out about it, is an attorney in Oregon called us because somehow yeah, I'm sure they do. So that's my long answer is I think yes.
One of the things that one of the slides I did not put in here is there are people that go out and make money doing this. So they go out and find this, and you could get a call from them, and then you have to pay them and that, we did have that in another state. And so that may happen, but I'm sure that you can go online and just, look, what did I Google? Lost funds or abandoned funds?
Yeah, unclaimed funds. Just go to Google and write unclaimed funds in whatever state that you want to look it up in. And that's a really good point. If you maybe haven't lived in Colorado your whole life, you're going to need to look in each state. Thank you. Yeah, that's a really good point. I've lived here my whole life, so I don't think about things like that as much.
Call them, actually.
Okay.
And it's called the Great Colorado Payback.
Oh yeah, you have this number.
They will actually
Help you with the other states.
They'll check everybody and they'll send you the form to get you rebate.
Yes, yeah. And I would assume there's similar processes in other states. Yeah. And so then the website is here, and it's pretty basic and simple. So you can really access this information pretty easily. So when we're talking about doing it for yourself and your loved ones, it's not going to take a long time for you to know if there's funds there or not. And then just a few other things. These are questions that I've been getting a lot recently, and I don't want people to worry about stuff. If something changes in your life, I don't want you to have to be worrying, oh, I need to update my estate plan, especially if you don't. So I just kind of listed, you really need to contact our office if your contact information changes. We want to know, your updated address and everything like that. If your emergency contacts, if they get a new phone number, if their phone numbers don't work anymore, please update us, because we're going to need to order you a new legal vault card so they can get a hold of your emergency contacts. If you were refinancing your house, we want to help you through that deed process. And then if I know there's some people out here who I've been harassing. If it's been 3 years since your last update, call me, make the appointment. It's free, we can do it. I'll make it easy for you, but let's get it done.
Even if we don't have changes.
Yeah, it's not for changes. If you have changes, call us as well. But the 3-year update is just a procedural thing. We want to keep your powers of attorney up to date. I know I procrastinate too. Like if there's nothing for you to do. You just have to come in, or I can even mail you PDFs. We'll talk about it. We'll make it easy for you. Don't worry. So then I've had people, who something happens and they're really worried about coming in and updating stuff, and it's something that we don't need to know. It doesn't change your estate plan, and you can kind of have some peace of mind knowing that there's provisions in there for these types of things. So if your bank changes or your financial planner changes, we don't need to know that, but you want to make sure that all your funding stuff is done. And Linda's actually going to come talk to you about that in a moment. You don't need to tell us if you sell your house, just if you buy a new one. We want to help you with that. And then if there's changes to the people that you've named, if there's changes in their life, you don't necessarily need to notify us. For that one, there's just a few that you don't need to tell us. Err on the side of calling us if you don't know, but this is more so that you guys can just have peace of mind.
Okay, I'm not gonna.
No, that one's not. No, it's not.
It's working.
So most of you have been to these presentations before. If you haven't, that means you probably have retained me in the past year and I've already nagged you about this. So I'm gonna hit this stuff and not keep you here forever, but it's the funding refresher. Funding means funding your trust. We created trust for all of you, and your assets need to be owned by the trust or it's not going to work the way we want it to. And so I just like to nag you every year on transferring your assets over to the trust, either to be the owner or the trust to be POD, which is pay on death beneficiary, or TOD, the different banks call it different things, but beneficiary. So if the trust is not funded, either owning your assets, and when I'm talking assets right now, I'm generally not talking retirement assets. I'm talking after-tax assets. So if your trust isn't either the owner or the beneficiary, we're probably going to have probate, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So I just like to remind you that your certification of trust, and the tab says, what does it say? Affidavit of trust? Privacy affidavit. So when you go through your binder, it's the privacy affidavit. We should have put a red tab on it. Anywhere in your binder, if there is a red tab, those are the most important things you need to do. And so that you would take your certification of trust to the bank, to your financial advisor, to your insurance agent, and that is your license to act on behalf of the trust. If you take that and they want a copy of your trust, I don't like you giving copies of your trust to any entities, because part of doing a trust is the privacy. And so if they request a copy of your trust, you're on the maintenance plan, you get treated very special. For free, we will send them the sections of the trust they need and not the entire trust. So don't give out a copy of your trust. If you have, then you have, but I don't like it. First of all, it violates your privacy, and second of all, now we've got to remember who has copies if you make amendments, because now you got to give them the amendments. So in the last year, have you purchased any assets? Oops, not too fast. That was definitely too fast. Have you purchased any assets? Have you bought a new car? If all of your vehicles together are worth more than $66,000, they need to be owned by your trust if they're not financed or leased or owned by a business. Because we can avoid probate if your personal property is worth less than $66,000 or anything in just your name. But I'm getting a new car and they're expensive. So that $66,000 isn't that much money. So pay attention to that. Have you review your beneficiary designations? If you have a good financial advisor, they're going to be meeting with you every year to review that. If they haven't talked to you about that, you call them. Or if you're doing yourself, you're doing your own investing, you need to review your beneficiaries anyway, every year. And make sure that if you go to the funding instruction tab in your binder, each of us have gone through that funding instruction personally, and I've written on there specific things, because every person in this room is different, and I've told every person in this room something different probably. And it just depends on your stuff. So that would be the other place that there is a red tab, is the funding instructions. So you're going to use the funding instructions and the certification of trust to make sure your trust is funded properly. If you have questions, you can always call the office. If you purchased a vehicle, a boat, you purchased a house, You know, Mandy said we don't need to know if you sell your house, but if you sell your house and you go buy a new house, you better make sure it's in the trust. If you bought it in the trust, great. You're one of my A students. If you bought a house and you didn't put it in the trust, then we need to do that for you. And one of the benefits you get for being on the maintenance plan is I don't charge you to do the deed that I normally charge $350 to. If you're refinancing or we recently had some clients getting a HELOC, I want to pull that out of the trust. I don't want to put debt in your trust. So we'll pull it out of the trust, get your HELOC, do your refinance, and then we'll put it back in. And the only cost to you is the $30 filing fee. If you've opened new bank accounts, make sure they're in the trust. So no, we don't need to know that you changed banks as long as you're opening those new bank accounts either in the trust or pay on death to the trust. If you have out-of-state real estate, you know, any of you that have in-state real estate, when you very first came to me and we did your trust, we put that in the trust, unless you were doing something goofy with financing or something. But most likely, we put that in the trust for you. I can't do out-of-state real estate. Any of you that have property in Hawaii, I would be happy for you to fly me down there to get licensed. But if you have out-of-state real estate, you know, look at your property tax statement is usually how you're gonna know if it's in your trust. So if you did your trust with me years ago, your property tax statement should be coming to the name of your trust. If you did it in the past year, it kind of takes the counties a little bit to catch up. Uh-huh.
If you have a PUD designation, if you have a PUD designation on, let's say, bank account, and it's not for the trust, is that okay? It's for an individual.
So that's where your funding reference card is going to be really important because each of you have done something different. Generally, I want POD to your trust. But maybe you told me, you know, yeah, I want all of my stuff to go this way according to my trust, but I want to leave this little account to that person. So maybe that is okay. It depends, okay? I want a POD because we're going to avoid probate, but you know, often one of the big things I tell you guys is the best, if you're charitably inclined, the best way to leave to charities is your retirement plans. So that may be a different designation. It just depends. So go back and look at your funding reference card. We have them scanned in for each of your files. So if you call and say, Linda, what were we supposed to do with our life insurance? You know, it's a little $10,000 policy. I'm gonna go look at what I told you on your funding reference card. But you can also look at that.
So under stocks and like, I didn't know where you're.
Specifically like for stocks as well as payable on death for the bills. Is that taxable or different or should?
So for stocks, so when I'm talking taxable versus non-taxable, I'm talking retirement plans. And we don't want retirement plans, even a Roth, which has already been taxed. We don't want retirement plans to pay to your trust unless we did a retirement plan trust and then ignore everything I'm saying. If you did a retirement plan trust with me, this doesn't apply to you. But everybody else, we do not want your trust as a beneficiary on any retirement plan because it will be a horrific tax consequence. I do retirement plan trust. If that piques your interest, we can make an appointment and come talk to me. Last year I talked about it, so I'm not going to talk about it again this year. But yeah, I mean, usually I want any non-qualified monies to go to the trust. Now there are a few of you that it is different. There are a few of you that said, you know, I'm leaving everything 50-50 to my kids, but I have this little bank account with $10,000, and my daughter's always been there for me, and she takes me to the doctor's office, and she does this stuff for me. I want her to have that account. Okay, that's a little different then. You know, that's why you don't do LegalZoom, because you're all different. You need a separate plan. So if you have any questions, if I've confused you or you don't know, I am happy to answer them. Call, email, look at your funding reference card. If you've inherited anything, you know, you need to then move that money into your trust. You know, you inherit stocks from a sibling. Those stocks have to be liquidated, and when you get your distribution, you got to put them somewhere. Put them in an account that has your trust on it, unless it's a retirement account or retirement inheritance. So this is what your funding reference card looks like, although every single one of you will have my writing all over it. And I had this attorney working for me a couple of years ago, and she went in and like started typing stuff on it so that so I wouldn't have to write similar stuff every time. I don't like that, because what are you going to look at first when you turn to that card? You're going to look at my handwriting. you're not gonna pay attention to the written stuff so much. But if I have handwritten, I've circled it, and I put asterisks everywhere, you're gonna pay attention to it. So every one of your cards has my handwriting on it, or Jamie's possibly. So then additional stuff we did, like I said, we do retirement plan trust. I gave a big long presentation last year on it, and I tried to change things up for you. Mandy was excited to talk about her thing, so. We do have on the tables, I think Mandy already mentioned, but we do have on the tables if you want to hear about stuff, whether it's at the annual meeting or when we have quarterly meetings. I will tell you guys, since last year when we were here, and then many of you weren't able to make it, we had a client that gave a presentation on genealogy last summer. It was amazing. Go to the website, you got the login information. I wasn't into genealogy, and now I am. It was an amazing presentation. I would go watch it. So if you have rental properties and we haven't talked about putting them in corporations, you need to do that. Go ahead, Mandy.
Just to reiterate also, we have extra handouts from the genealogy presentation and the identity theft presentation last year. I have them here if you guys want them. Just see me on the way out.
Okay, good. We do prenup and postnup and cohabitation agreements. If your kids are living with somebody or appear to be living with somebody and you don't want them to be common law married, we probably should take care of that so that it doesn't screw things up with your estate plan. Irrevocable life insurance trust, I'm not going to get into. Right now, you need to have over $11 million before you need that. If you win the Powerball, call me before you go cash in that ticket. Not because, I mean, sure, I'd love to share in your joy, but there is actually some tax planning you can do with that. LLCs, guardianships, conservatorships, probate, you guys can read, I don't need to read this whole list to you. So the benefits, you get this annual meeting, I send out the annual letter, I don't charge to change your fiduciaries. I probably pressured many of you to name backups. And so my promise is always, as long as you're on the maintenance plan, I won't charge you to change the trustee or the medical agent or whoever that might be. You can call our office for free. If you're not on the maintenance plan, we charge for our time. So, we work with other professionals. If you need a referral for somebody, we even have people call and ask where we buy our coffee maker from. We're here for you. We get 20% off of anything else. So if you're one of those that has rentals and we need to deal with them, then you would get 20% off of whatever I charge for that. I've already talked about the deeds. We have educational programs. We try to do them 3 times a year. So this is the first quarter, and then we do the second, third quarter. Usually by the fourth quarter, you guys are all so busy with the holidays that doesn't happen. And then we renew your emergency card. Be patient with that because it's not up to, you want to comment on the emergency card at all, Mandy? Since you have to deal with that all the time?
Yeah, it's just out of our hands at a certain point. I mean, we order them in advance and I get complaints that sometimes you get them later. I apologize. We try to do everything we can to mitigate that. If you, for whatever reason, Legal Vault does send you a card later, like after the one that you had expires, don't be concerned. Your PIN never changes. And because we do renew you on time, your membership never lapses. So, still carry that card around until you get the new one. Call us if it's, call us, but just also give us some patience because it's another company that we have no control.
And so we've just had problems with them maybe sending you your card 30 days after the expiration. But we've already renewed you. So if something happens to you and you have that Legal Vault card with you and the hospital calls Legal Vault to get your documents, they're going to get your documents. And then we like to update your powers of attorney every 3 years. Mandy already talked about that. So the previous video presentations are always going to be uploaded. Like I said, the genealogy one just blew me away. If you haven't looked at other ones, the DA's office just talked about identity theft last year. Several years ago, we had a gentleman give a presentation on not becoming a victim and self-defense, and I think that was probably in the top 2 of the best presentations we've had. That and the genealogy would probably be my favorite. We change a password every year, so this year it's Be Happy 19. Thank you for coming. Now we can open it up for questions. Anybody have questions? Here, I'll go here, Mandy, you work your way over here. And I'll go right here.
So in our estate planning portfolio, are there any new tabs last year?
That's an A++ client. She brought a binder. I should have used it as an example. No, there are no new tabs. There are no new tabs. But when you come in for your 3-year update, we go through all of that. And even though you think that you don't have changes for the 3-year update, stuff changes, you guys. I'm with a national group of estate planning attorneys. We've got 2,000 attorneys drafting your documents. We all come across goofy stuff, and I'll give you one example. There's many examples, but I had a couple where the wife got premature Alzheimer's in her 60s, pretty aggressive. And so the husband retired, and she loved traveling. So they went traveling. And our powers of attorney said that travel and recreation needs. It didn't say passport, and her passport expired. And so because the power of attorney didn't specifically say passport, he was unable to renew her passport. Guess what's in your powers of attorney now? So there's stuff like that happening all over the country, and because I'm with this group of attorneys, all of our documents are getting updated on a regular basis. So even though you think, no, I don't want to come in, it's only been 3 years, I don't have any changes, there's going to be something different in your power of attorney in 3 years, I promise you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, how is it that you get to know about the educational opportunities? Because I never see that. You have to go on.
So go on that slide that we had with the email and make sure.
No, we mail all invitations for
Use the microphone.
How often?
every quarter. So any class, any maintenance plan class for every quarter, like the quarterly classes she's talking about, we always mail those. We'll also do an email invite, but we always do a print mail invite. So let's make sure your mailing address is accurate.
Okay, and
How
so
did you get this? Okay.
yeah, so yeah, if you got this, you should have been getting stuff. But on this little half-page form where you can put stuff, if you think that if you want to confirm that you have your correct address and email and stuff, just write it on here and turn it in. It'd be nice if you marked stuff you're interested in, but if nothing else, if you're concerned that you're missing something, fill these out. And that's probably easier than killing Mandy with phone calls Monday morning. Anything else? And
just a trivia question. After both my wife and I pass away, I'm not wanting that to happen soon, but how do the funds from an item that's payable to the trust, how do they get from where they were sitting into the trust? Does that go into a bank account that has to be open so then it's dispersed?
so your successor trustees will need to come in and meet with me, and you know that certification of trust that you have, that basically I call it your license tacked on behalf of the trust, they'll get a new one of those. And your trust becomes irrevocable, so it also gets a new tax ID number. Your social security number no longer works when you die. Whether you have a trust or not, social security numbers terminate upon death. So there's some paperwork they're gonna have to come in and get from me, and then they take it to close those accounts. And it's been a while since I've done a trust administration presentation and I call it a trustee training, where I tell you, bring your successor trustees so they know what we're talking about. So maybe this year we'll do Mandy's trying to say.
If you're interested in that, mark the successor trustee training on your survey in front of you. Thank you.
I only work there. I'm in so much trouble. I had a nightmare the other night that she quit, and I was like, I'm shutting it down. I'm shutting it down. There's your answer. Anything else? I love seeing you guys every year. I mean, what do you think about this venue? I think it's so much better. How was the food? And I've got cold food back there. How was it? Is it decent? No? No? Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Be safe out there. Stay warm.